Hello, hi everyone, and welcome to today's masterclass. So we're diving into a big topic today: how to talk about money with a potential franchisee. So I'm really happy to be hosting this session with Phil Mowat. Phil is a managing consultant at Ashtons Franchise Consulting over in the UK. Phil, it's great to have you with us, and
Thank you, Lauren.
we've also got an incredible guest speakers joining us, and we're just really glad to have you all here today. So now today's topic is a fascinating one, mostly because we just don't talk about it enough. Let's be honest, money is always a bit of a tricky subject. So it can be intimidating for some, and for others, it's just hard to know how to bring it up. But at the end of the day, it's probably one of the most critical part of the whole franchisee recruitment process. So, Phil, you're the one who suggested that we tackle this today, and I think you really nailed a hot topic. We've had nearly 50 franchisors signing up for this session, which I think shows how much this is on everyone's mind. We've also brought together some fantastic speakers, and once again, we are lucky to have both US and UK franchisors with us to share their experience. So they also represent different sectors and network sizes. So I think the mix of perspective is going to make a really great discussion today. So, and our goal today is to provide a session where franchisors share their knowledge and real world feedback on talking money with potential franchises, whether they're good or bad experiences, and also benefit from Phil's expertise, as he has a great experience with many franchise networks. My hope is that you leave today having learned something new with fresh perspectives for your own network and concrete actions to successfully recruit new franchises. So today, the agenda, we'll just take a few minutes for the speakers to introduce themselves, and then we'll go into the discussion and let our speakers chat about today's topic, and we'll keep some time at the end to answer all of your questions. So there's a chat box on the right. So you can say, I can see a few messages already. So feel free to say hello and maybe drop a few words about you and where you are, and send your questions as we go. We will try to answer as many as possible at the end of the session. Okay, so now for the introductions, maybe Jenna, if you wanna start.
Hi, of course. So I'm Jenna. I am the franchisor. I'm the founder and the franchisor of Little Dreams. We are baby and child sleep consultants. My background, I was a solicitor for 12 years, a lawyer for 12 years, had my middle child, decided I didn't like being a solicitor anymore, so retrained as a baby and child sleep consultant. We franchised just over 4 years ago, and we've just offered our 8th and 9th franchises. We've got obviously 7 territories, and just offered our 8th and 9th. So it's all go for this year.
Thanks, Jenna. Steve.
Hi, I'm the CEO and founder of Plan Burrito. So we started franchising in 2022 and currently have 15 sites, with 3 more opening in the next couple of months, and we should be up to 20 by the end of the year. So I'm probably as busy as Jenna, I imagine. And we've worked with Phil from Ashtons. We use them for our franchise consultants. So, great company to work with.
Same.
Thanks, Steve. Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Laurent, for having me on. Thanks, everybody, for joining today. So my name is Lee. I am based out of Washington State here in the U.S. I'm the VP of Sales for Augusta Lawn Care. We actually launched our franchise in the heart of COVID. So our first locations went active. We started selling in 2019, launched in 2020, right in the heart of COVID. But we are a lawn care franchise, so we were able to work outside, which worked out well for us. I've been with the company for 8 years. Really started at the bottom, pushing a mower for $14 an hour, and have been here for a while. And now we have over 200 locations across the US, Canada, and we recently launched in Australia a couple of locations. So excited to be here.
Wow, thanks, Lee. Impressive. Phil.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks for hosting this. I love the difference between the UK and the US. It's like we've got franchisees saying we've got 20 or 30 and we're like doing really well, and the US like, yeah, we just started, we've got 200 already. So we'll discuss this anyway, the scale and things like that. Yeah, I'm Phil from Ashtons Franchise Consulting. We are franchise consultants, not a broker, not a reseller of franchises, but we help businesses to become franchise brands. So we help them with their development. So Steve and Jenna approached us, said, we want to franchise a business. How do we do it? We help them get going. We help them get up and running. We help them get their first few franchisees on board. My background is I ran a franchise with my sister, a makeup artist booking agency for weddings and events. And then I worked at a couple of global franchises, and then I've stepped into this role about 6 years ago. So we help all sorts of businesses, as per the screen today, right up to major corporations, to much smaller businesses as well. So yeah, really interesting role, and great to be able to work with so many different industries.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks a lot for joining us today. So I'm Lawrence. I'm the co-founder of Smappen. It's a franchise territory mapping and location analysis software that's currently used by over 500 franchise brands, mainly in Europe and North America, and currently launching in Australia. Phil, I'll hand it over to you to introduce the topic and lead the discussions now.
Cool, thank you. So it's been a bit of a theme for me this month, because I've run a few events, in-person events and online events, and it's something that I think is so important to especially new franchisors around how to talk money to prospects. The first question is, how much is it going to cost me? How much money am I going to make? Why is it like that? And actually, in our experience, you want to be finding franchisees that are going to be buying into you and your story in the business, and not necessarily making a decision on it's £25,000 or $50,000. You want them to come on board because they're going to be good for your business. So there is a deflection in some way of not putting it out there necessarily to say, yes, it's £25,000, but there is a definite balance. So in these sessions that I've been running, it's been really interesting talking to different franchisors at different stages and trying to understand how they do it, why they do it that way. And it might be sector by sector or size differences and things like that, or just plain the franchisor's attitude on how to pitch it. So what we're going to do, we've got 4 distinct areas, and we'll have a few questions in each, and we're just going to have a conversation and see how it goes. So we haven't practiced this, we haven't rehearsed this, so let's see what happens. Question number 1 is all around that startup cost. So Jenna, I'll start with you.
Okay.
I'm a prospect franchisee. The first thing I say is, hey Jenna, how much is this going to cost me? What's your reply? Like, how do you even go about answering that?
So by the time we are speaking, you'd have already got our brochure, and it's in there, because what we want to make sure is that what we find is that because the people that we are attracting don't really understand franchising. So what I was finding in the early days is that if I was talking to people, they were like, what's the money about? And it's like, actually, it's not as straightforward as that. You need to have a little bit of education first and understand the value, rather than being like, well, why is it that much? And so what we found is that we don't have it on our website, but we have it really early on in the process, but before we have a chat to anybody, so that they've seen it in the brochure. The brochure is, a little bit of education around what franchising is, what you get for the franchise, because most people, almost every person I've spoken to, doesn't have a clue really what franchising is, other than maybe McDonald's. So for us, it's really, what we didn't want to do is kind of talk to people who didn't have an idea of the cost, but also the value. So
now, that could be quite a UK defined thing, couldn't it? Not really understanding what franchising is.
Yeah.
Lee, how does that sit with you in the US? And what's your one more question? Sorry, Jenna. Was your brochure, is it hidden behind like a lead form? Do they have to leave their name and number to get it?
They do, yes, but it's the very first stage, and then that's kind of how we have their details.
Yeah, cool. So Lee, talk us through like how you announce your franchise fee to prospects.
Yeah, it's a great question. So for the US and Canadian-based franchises, something that's really common that people refer to as the Entrepreneur Franchise 500. And that's not as much of an open resource, if you will, for UK brands from what I found. So please correct me if I'm wrong there. But the Franchise 500 is a website where you can basically find FDDs, you can find initial fees, you can find expected investment ranges for the top 500 brands in the US and Canada. And therefore, our numbers are already out there. We submit every year because we want to rank in that Franchise 500. It's kind of a badge of honor, right? It shows your prospects that you're a solid brand. You've been vetted by this kind of independent source, Entrepreneur Franchise 500. So our numbers are already out there. Same thing with on our website, similar to Jenna, is that we don't necessarily plaster the number right as you get onto the website, but it's in some of the brochures, it's in some of the downloadables, it's in a webinar. If you watch the short video on our website, it's right there on the main page. So the goal is building value, as Jenna said, around that fee. Like, why would you pay that fee? So we don't hide it by any means, but if a prospect comes straight to me with like, hey, what is that number? I'm going to tell them, right? Yeah. It's a human interaction. And that's where, hey, if you want to know the price, I'm going to give it to you. Now, let me explain why that's our price, and then make sure that your goals align with paying that price. And that's what I try to do with most of our prospects.
Cool. Now, American franchisors on the call, you might be like crazy at this thought that in the UK, we don't have any laws around franchising. So we don't need to do FDDs. We don't need to disclose this information. Obviously, we do as professional, ethical advisors and franchisors, but we do have a top 100 list, but it's more of a judging competition rather than based on things. We have franchise websites where people would put the franchise fee is £20,000, for example. However, Steve, I'll come on to you because you're in the food and beverage world. You have the franchise fee, you have the setup costs, the fit out costs. Like your proposition and opportunity actually comes in a lot cheaper than some other F&B brands.
So I kind of agree with Lee. We'd never kind of hide the figures. We always want people to know that franchising is affordable. A lot of people, when they think they want to invest in a brand or open a franchise, they just think it's out of their reach. They don't understand that banks will lend them, even for a new franchise, they'll lend more likely 50% of what they're needing. So we shout about our fees, like you say, there's portals and stuff like that, and we can advertise the franchise fees on the portal. And then what we did is we used a franchise information memorandum that deep dives into the figures on what can be your expected returns, and you've got your different scenarios and basic P&Ls and stuff like that. So, once they've shown the interest and everything else like that, we want people to know that this is affordable. And our job in there is, once you can afford it and your vision aligns with ours, then we're there to support you afterwards as well. In our game, to do what we're doing, you're usually looking at $250,000 minimum investment to, up to $1 million. And, we're sitting down at around 100,000. So that's total investment with shop fit out and everything else like that. So to us, it's a selling point, and to a franchisee, it's an affordable level where they can say, right, I can give up my 9-to-5 job, I can start my own business, and I've got a good support network there from a proven brand.
Cool. I've got an example from one of my clients recently who was, the overall cost of the franchise was 170K, but actually 80K of that could be asset financed because it was equipment, and 80% of his franchisees coming on were taking that finance. So it's like, stop selling it at 170, start selling it at 90 plus, and you obviously disclose all that information. But if 80% of your new people are joining doing the asset finance and it's being costed out over the 5 or however many years, then that's the sales price. The other side I find with the portals, it's hard because one portal will talk about license fee, support package and break it down. Others won't. And if people are comparing apples for pears, very English expression, do you have that in the States, Lee? Comparing apples with apples? Or pears
Apples and oranges is what we say, but same thing.
Yeah. Cool. Glad I'm not like losing my mind. Yeah, it's like if people look at it in a very black and white way, it's quite hard to compare. And if people are making decisions based on just like something they read without even talking to you, you've lost that prospect, which can be frustrating. So, okay. Now let's talk about, so they're bought into the price. Talk about cash flow and how you start explaining that to people. Steve, do you want to start? Like, the people coming to you, are they business people or are they career redundancy people? Like, or is it a mixture of the two? And how do you cater to them?
Yeah, I mean, we have a wide variety, and I think at the very beginning of our journey, you very much get the people who haven't really been in business, but they want to start a business. And that's brilliant, because I was there at one point before, I was an engineer before I went down this avenue. So there's only one way of learning, and that's by doing it, So, but I think as you go on and the brand grows, you start getting a lot more interest from business people or investors and everything else like that. In terms of kind of the cash flow side of things, I think the biggest point on anything when taking a new franchisee on is that they've got a good contingency to kind of carry them through if you don't get an absolutely booming start, or you get a booming start quite normally, and then it will drop off, and then it will level out, and then the idea is to build it back up to where it started, So having a contingency funding to do that. But, really this should be, and we stress this time and time again, it needs to be put into a business plan, and it needs to be done properly, and it needs to be done with, multiple scenarios. So we can say, if we're only taking this much, and then you can plan your cash flow, and then we can see if it's viable or not.
It's understanding their personal expenses, isn't it? And going, wow, you need $5,000 a month or $2,000 a month or whatever, and understanding where they're coming from and
absolutely
what the backing behind them is. Lee, how does that pan out in the US? Like, are you allowed to do cash flow planning with them, or is that something they need to do themselves? Or
Yeah, it's a great question. So in the US, as you mentioned, we have the FDD. So we have to disclose certain financial performance metrics of our individual locations. Now, actually, we aren't required to do that, but most franchisors do offer some sort of financial performance breakdown in their franchise disclosure documents. And so we've done that, and we just produce averages. We don't do anything overly complex. We want it to be very straightforward for prospective owners to understand. Hey, this is the average across all locations. That's one metric we give. And then this is the average across locations that have been open for a minimum of 3 years. The reason we also like to use that metric is because we know our model, being a home service model, we have to go out and get clients. It's not brick and mortar like a tasty burrito shop, right? We have to go out and get clients, and therefore there is a expected ramp of that client base being built over time. So we share, hey, here's the average across the system, just so you can get an understanding of what you might make by having an Augusta location. Here's the average after you've been with us for 3 years, and that's where the returns really start to become nice for the owners. Honestly, that's when they start to become more substantial, and they start to see this as an investment opportunity and not just purchasing a job, if you will.
Okay. And Jenna,
but to your question, Phil, I apologize. Let me just wrap that up. I can't sit down and be like, here's what you could make. I can't say that in the US. I can share the projections. I can share averages. I can share benchmarks. I can share stories, like anecdotal stories. Hey, we had an owner who did this last year. You should reach out to them and talk to them. But I can't sit and like financial plan for them, because that's what we call promise of earnings, and I'm not allowed to do that. So,
But it's very much similar here, isn't it? Jenna and Steve will know from our work with them. Jenna, how, like, again, I'm a potential franchisee for you. How are you going to explain? I might come to you and say, well, I'm leaving my job. How am I going to pay the mortgage next month? How do you pitch that?
Well, I used to be a solicitor, so I'm like very cautious with what we talk to people about. And I think we kind of do it similar in a little way to Lee. So again, like I was saying, the franchisees that we attract, we kind of have to explain things quite basically and gently, you know, to begin with. They wouldn't really know what I'm talking about if I'm talking about working capital or turnover or gross or net. So we kind of almost had to educate at the very beginning, and then we talk about averages. So we kind of look at the averages of the network over the first 3 years, because that's what we have at the moment. We look at potential projections. We look at the best as well, but we also have in bold highlighted that it's very much illustrative, that, you know, we cannot guarantee anything, but we don't kind of assist kind of in the way that, you know, Lee was talking about, that they can't, but we do have a spreadsheet which is kind of set out, which talks through what may be achievable, the possible outgoings that they may have, and then it also works out what their working capital needs might be, because most people, again, don't really understand that they might need working capital because they're used to having a salary. So but again, it's very clear that it's illustrative, and it needs to be based upon their own outgoings or their own needs, which actually, again, most people that we speak to don't actually know.
Yeah,
we're kind of working with them at quite a slow pace, I guess. Kind of each stage is very educational and explanatory. You know, we're not telling them, or, you know, because obviously none of us would, this is what you will make. You know, we're very clear that there's no guarantees. This is what can be achieved. This is the averages. But you also need to come to some of our meetings really well prepared with your own finances of what your own needs are. And then we'll kind of help you with this spreadsheet to work out what your working capital needs might be, which we then have to explain what working capital is as well.
Yeah. And it's reminding them that Netflix, Disney and Amazon Prime actually equals £27 a month, not the £5 a month that you've put down. And I like it when they add it all up and they go, oh, I spend £2,000 a month, but my pay's £4,000 a month. Where does my £2,000 a month go, sort of thing? So, or educating them around maternity allowance or holiday pay. And it's I think sometimes you do need to start at that level. But then, Steve, what you're saying about you're now getting more of the investor types and the people that are going to open up 5 locations with you, like
very different.
At the Barclays event that we went to in March, it was like some of the brands, and yourself included, you were very clear. Slide, bang, these are the figures. And that's what these investors want to see. They want to see the return on their investment, don't they?
Well, I don't think any of them's going in because they, you know, morally want to, you know, they embrace it because, look, they're in it for money. Let's cut to the chase. They're in it for money.
Yeah.
They're not going to enter a brand if they know they're going to lose money. You know, what's the point?
Yeah.
Ultimately, when a franchisee comes to you and says, what am I going to earn, or how much is it going to cost? Personally, I think it's a fine question to ask, because they are going in it to make money, and you want the franchisees to make money. You know, you want to drive them to make money, because if the franchisees do well, your brand does well. So, yeah, I mean,
no, you might contest that, because your ideal franchisee has probably been through a bad experience with their child, and they want to help other mums and dads.
Yeah. Jenna's situation is completely different to the F&B, and I completely agree. Like, going into Jenna, especially like you say, I mean, I have children with autism, and they can get real help from Little Dreams and stuff like that. That's a different case, you know. That to me, and if you can make money on top of that, then it's one of the best businesses in the world, because, you know, you've got the charitable aspect of it, and you've got the emotional aspect of it, and then you've got, you know, making an income from something that you enjoy or, you know, you embrace doing.
Yeah, we're kind of looking.
I mean, no one has that relationship with a burrito.
No.
You know?
I mean, you never know.
Burritos are good, Steve.
Yes, so.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, so we're looking for kind of women who, like you said, they may or may not, but they've probably had children. They've got a career, but then probably they're realizing that it's not working around their career. So they want something they can be passionate about, that they can be proud of, but they also want it to
bring in the money. At the end of the day, they do want to bring in money.
Ultimately, yeah, it's got to pay. It's got to pay.
Less so than Stephen's, Steve, you're kind of, they're not coming in to sort of have a relationship with the burrito.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you're probably slightly different franchises. But yeah, our franchisees, obviously they want to make money, but for them, that's not the be all and end all. They're not the investor. They want all the other things as well, but they also want to make good money, which you can. But yeah, probably not. Slightly different.
Okay, interesting. So we've slightly moved into section 2, which is talking about the profit and loss illustrations, as we would call them in the UK, and how you present those to people in a transparent but realistic way without making promises. And it's a balance, isn't it? It's being ethical and professional, and it's not putting people off, but it's not putting people too much the other end. I ran a seminar this morning and I showed some examples of like adverts coming through. From one of them's like, you could earn 40 to 50k earning 2 hours, working 2 hours a day. It's like, well, what if I worked 2.5 hours and only earned 37.5 grand? I could be like, I could sue you because your advert says so. It's like, it's crap, quite frankly, isn't it? So,
and I think there's a lot of that on social media. There's a lot of work in your baby's nap time and earn £50,000, and it's like, well, that's not quite that easy to do that.
Well, it's clickbait, really, isn't it? It's to grab your attention. But you've got we're owned by a law firm, so everything is disclaimers and illustrations and stuff. But there were other ones that I found examples of, and one of them talked about no franchise fee, all profit, and then 2 paragraphs down it said, and for the first people it's £5,000 instead of £10,000. I was like, how does that? Are you the same people? So, but that's going back to the initial fee. Let's talk about your current franchisees, how much you get them involved in chats with potential franchisees. Lee, in your disclosure document, do you have to disclose every single name and number of franchisee so they could call anyone?
Correct. Yes.
Does that happen?
Yeah. So in the US, when we have a prospective franchisee, they are sent the FDD for their review. That is part of the legal process. And in that FDD, we have to disclose every current and former franchisee. That is by law in the US.
With phone numbers.
With phone numbers, correct. Now, that's the only information we have to give. And it's, in theory, like it's not vetted by anyone, but we are going to be ethical. We're going to put in the most up-to-date contact information we have for former and current owners. So yes, anyone right now could find our FDD online and call any owner in Augusta. But we also are very forthcoming with that. So when someone has their first kind of discovery call with me or my team, we are giving them at least 3 owners near them to talk to. And that's obviously a luxury we have, being such a large brand at this point, is, hey, you're in this state here in the US. There are 3 owners within, 5 hours of you. I'm going to give you their names and emails. I want you to reach out to them first, because we also rely pretty heavily on our owners vetting those prospective owners. Yeah. And I have had owners reach out and they were like, hey, he was, unprofessional on the call. Hey, I don't think he's a good fit for the brand. Hey, he said some things that threw up some red flags. Maybe double check what he meant by that on your next call. That's very important for protecting the overall culture and standards of your brand. So I tell prospects, it is a requirement for you to talk to some of our existing owners. So if someone gets on a call with me and they're like, hey, where do I send the money? I say, great, who'd you talk to? And if they say nobody, I'm gonna be like, cool, I actually need you to do that first before I take the money. And that shows us, it positions us to where like we respect our culture and the standard we've set as a company above just accepting whoever's money. And so that's sometimes a hard conversation to have, but it shows like how much you value your culture when you're willing to like pause the sales process to make sure that they're vetted properly. So we embrace it as a positive more than a negative.
Do you think you're different to other US brands? Like are all US brands doing a similar thing to you, or like where do you sit?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, I'm biased. I think we are very much so in the disruptors camp of the home service franchise industry, based on our fee structure and how we operate. And we are a founder-led company. Our CEO and founder is very public on YouTube and social media, and he has a lot of fans. And so our first 50 franchisees quite literally just came from YouTube followers. Like, in all honesty, they found him on YouTube. They're like, he's giving great business advice. If you can't beat him, join him. I'll just join Augusta. And so that's kind of how we've really built our brand, is based on a community element versus going after investors. And so Steven's point, now I'm having to switch to like, oh, I have people that come to me and they're like, hey, Lee, I have 500K liquid. Is Augusta the right fit for me? And I'm like, whoa, I'm used to people that are like, hey, I've watched you on YouTube for years and I'm ready to join. Right. And so that's a pivot I'm having to make. And that's that I've had to learn how to talk about money with investors and not just people from the audience. So kind of growing your skill set of how to talk about money as the brand grows is very important.
And Stephen and Jenna, like we're obviously smaller and we're British, so we're quite reserved and polite and worried and scared and all these terrible things. Like what probably when you first started as a franchisor, were you thinking, oh my God, what happens if they speak to my franchisee and the franchisee says something bad? Is that true? Like, did you think that?
I guess we were always advised that really we should be confident enough that potential franchisees should be able to speak to any of our franchisees. So we do, in one of our processes, we have the I guess what we might think the best 3 franchisees fit wise. It might be that they have young children or they're slightly older, whatever it might be, the career, but they are welcome to speak to any of our franchisees. So we let the franchisees know. We actually have them, they speak to them after they signed their NDA. Yeah. So we email the franchisees once someone's signed the NDA and said, look, this person has signed. If you're happy to talk to them and tell them whatever you're happy to share about your business, please be honest and open with them. That's really all we say, because we don't want to get in the way.
Have you lost any because of that happening, do you think?
I don't think so. Maybe one.
We can cut this bit out so your franchisees won't.
But I think if we did, then they probably wouldn't be the right fit for us, because it's really important that they know, for example, our franchise is incredibly flexible, which has huge amounts of positives. But of course, by virtue of that, you may also need to speak to a client at the weekend, for example. So, we talk that way, but we recommend that all potential franchisees speak to 2, 3, however many they want. They could speak to any of them if they want to.
And do you think they're going in to talk about finances and stuff? Like, do they talk financials with each other?
They touch on it, but again, like, we're British, so they kind of. I think we
talk about the weather for an hour.
We talk a lot more now.
Out there.
I can hear someone has birds in the background.
Yeah, I think it's Lee. I think he's on brand, isn't he?
But we talk a lot more now about. I think we're probably a lot more open now about finances, and we're very clear now about finances than we maybe were in the very beginning. It was all in the documentation in the very beginning, but I think we kind of introduce it now at an earlier stage to make sure everyone is realistic about everything at an earlier stage. And if that's not right for them, then that's not right.
And that your confidence has grown, isn't it? Because you've signed people, you've helped them become successful. That's helped you sign more. So, like, when I first started with my sister, it's like £3,500 was like, whoa, it seemed a lot of money. And then it's like, it's not anything at all. It's like, so you just build up the confidence, don't you? Steve,
and I think what makes it easier, sorry, just to be quickly, is if you're confident about your pricing and what you're charging, then that comes across when you're talking to a potential franchisee. If you're like, well, it's this amount of money, like, I know that's a lot, but that's then not, that's not then showing the true value of it.
We were selling to makeup artists who, if they made 20 grand a year, they were rich. So it was like that's where that mindset comes from. So well, we got there. Steve, what happens in your situation?
Well, we advise them to talk to our earliest franchisees, simply because they've been trading with us for 3 years, 4 years. It's very easy to say, go and see this guy X down the road. They've just opened up. There's a massive buzz around a new store opening and making good money and everything else. Go and talk to them, But how much time have they had dealing with head office to iron out any creases, or when their sales are not too good, how do we advise them on local marketing and national marketing to increase them sales? So we strategically ask them to talk to our founder franchisees effectively, because they've been trading the longest with us, so they have more evidence on how we as a head office support them. So they can go into the nitty gritty. They've had the hard times, they've had the good times. They can be really open about it. Cash flow usually at the beginning is harder until the business starts going, and they can explain all that. So we open the doors for prospective franchisees to talk to them people, because it gives them realistic expectations from someone else who's a third party effectively. So yeah,
sounds good. So if you get someone really pessimistic and said, well, what's the worst case scenario here, what's the worst that could happen, does that put you off as a prospect, Lee?
No, just say you're going to be broke. You'll have to sell your house, you're on the streets, mate. Listen, what business goes without risk? And the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward, usually.
Would you illustrate like a break-even scenario, for example? You need to sell this many burritos in a month and you'll break even. We
work to break even, because break even's a real milestone, because all your fixed costs are out that side, and then it's your profits come fast after that. But I do find that a lot of franchisees will go in there expecting a lot more, in terms of, especially in the F&B market. So when we open up a store, we have to put a lot of offers on. When we open up, we're doing free burritos, we're doing half price burritos, we're doing this, we're doing that, for the first, quite often for 3 months, to build up your clientele in the area. And then you'll have the franchisee say, oh, well, in the franchise information memorandum, it says, food is at X percentage. Well, we're not there. And I said, well, you're not going to be there, mate. Not for your first 2 years.
Yeah.
You're using guerrilla marketing and discounts and giveaways and everything to, market yourself and build yourself into the community and into your area. So I do think franchising expectations are a little bit skew with. It's the long game, it's the long game. And what you put in year 1 and 2, then look at reaping the benefits in years 3, 4, 5, 6, and why do McDonald's still market now? Because they understand how important it is to keep the brand in the forefront, So I think sometimes they a
bit of truthful honesty. Now, Lee, in the States, you're not pessimistic or skeptic at all like us lot. Do you ever come across these real hard? It's probably the Brits that have moved across to America that give you the hardest time, isn't it? Do you have many people that come along and go, well, this is a load of crap, and that's not going to work? Or
it does happen for sure. I would say you'd be surprised at how many people approach it like that. But I do like Steven's kind of almost like humor, break the ice. Well, you'll be out on the street, and that's sometimes kind of how I'll handle that conversation. Is well, then you gave it your best shot and you closed down. That is worst case scenario. So, but then you kind of curtail that, but at least you bet on yourself. And isn't that the goal of business ownership? Don't you want to bet on yourself? When you first booked this call with me, you said you want to be your own boss. You want to build a team. You want to use your leadership skills. So worst case scenario is that fails, and then you start over. Right. And obviously it's kind of like easing the blow of okay, that is a reality, but then you follow up with, but here's the structure that we have to make sure you won't fail. Right. And that's why you join a franchise. And then you can talk about success metrics, and you can talk about this, that, or the other. And I think to Steven's point as well, which is great, is hey, you're going to be investing for the first year to 2 years. You are not making withdrawals, you are making investments. And I think that's really important for defining your model for prospective franchisees. We have very clear language here at Augusta. And one of them for all of our owners, right now, if I asked all 100 and something owners in Augusta, I said, what is your business in growth mode or profit mode? All of them would be able to answer that very quickly, because that's the language we speak at Augusta. It's there is a profit mode version of your Augusta Lawn Care franchise, and then there is a growth mode version of your Augusta Lawn Care franchise. And behind that, there's so much verbiage and definitions and frameworks that we built with our owners. And it makes it less about like, I need a return versus like, this is the current goal and this is the direction I'm headed.
I think we all need a Lee in our businesses, don't we? I think he's great.
The enthusiasm in the accent helps, I think, as well.
Yeah. I'll take temporary residency over there.
The weather's beautiful. It's 18 degrees today. Come on over.
Look, t-shirts are on. A bit cold, actually, a bit chilly. Jenna, what about you? Like, worst case scenario, are you getting many people coming along and going, oh, I'm really scared about this. Should I quit my job?
I think that that's one of the main concerns that when people come to us, they have. But we, again, kind of as part of this sort of educational way that we do things, we kind of talk about the statistics. We're very data driven and evidence-based. So we talk about the statistics, the 50% of businesses that fail within the first 3 years versus less than 1% as franchising, for example. And we even have a slide that talks about, we do sort of some PowerPoints for beforehand. And we have a slide that says, you've probably come to look at a franchise because you are risk averse. And that's exactly why you're here. Yeah. But, if someone, because we talk about the, I love the phrasing actually that Lee just had, the growth mode and the profit mode. I might borrow that.
Jenna, take it from me.
I like that as well, Lee.
It's going to be all over the UK.
Everywhere now. Sorry, Lee.
Good.
But yeah, we're very educational with it. So we talk about, we look at the first year, the average, and the second year average, and the third year average. And you can see, obviously, our franchisees tend to make profit in the first year. Not huge, but they tend to make a profit. But then obviously the profit then really increases in year 2 and year 3 because we've got relatively low overheads. We're slightly different. But, we do talk about, if someone were to say to me, what is worst case scenario, I probably wouldn't be quite as brutal as Stephen because they would run a mile, but I would tell them because I think otherwise that's not ethical. That's not why we're here. If I was to be like, oh, no, you'll be absolutely fine. You'll become 100% guaranteed. You're like, oh my gosh, like that literally saying that even here makes me feel a bit physically sick. Like literally we have so many, not disclaimers, but very clear. This is illustrative. This is what can be achieved. This is the average. But I can't tell you how many times I say there are no guarantees when I'm talking to potential franchisees. I think as well, because A, I want to be completely ethical, but B, I used to be a solicitor.
Yeah.
So part of me is a bit
covering our backs.
Yeah.
Okay. If I can jump in there, just for like Stephen and Jenna, if you want to add, one of the things that I don't know if you guys are both doing the discovery calls for your prospects. I do most of the intake and the discovery calls. But one of the things too that I like to try to establish before we even really talk about Augusta is like, why do you want to be a small business owner? Like, why do you even want to have your own business? And then you can always go back to anchoring that as like, well, if this is your goal, how does my brand not align with that? Versus, they're worried about like, oh, if I join your brand, I might fail. No, it's not about that. It's about, do you want to start a business? And if you do, does my brand align with your business goals? Right. And so I think that kind of eliminates the like talking about the franchise money, but more about like their goals as a business owner. So I don't know how you handle that when people like push back on the like, oh, I don't know if I should join your brand because you're risk averse, to Jenna's point. Like, I think that's a great point. They are risk averse. So like, how do we ground them in the fact that like your goal is to be a business owner, joining us is less risky, right?
We have a video actually in one of our discoveries about what's your why. So we talk about that quite early on. And that's also to make them think about what their why is. It's like, why are you here? Because, being brutally honest, probably slightly different to you, Stephen. People aren't going to come and invest in our business because they are investing, because they want to make a huge amount of money. You can make good money. I'm not saying you can't, but they also want it to be flexible. They want to make a difference. They've had a career and it's not working around their family. And so we kind of talk a lot about what their why, but it also means that later down the line, when I'm talking to them, closer to interview stage, for example, I'm then aware of that. So when we are talking about finances, because again, we're British and, lots of the people that I'm talking to are risk averse. We can talk about the finances, but we're like, yes, these are the finances. Yes, the profit might not be huge in the first year, but actually let's go back to why you're here, because you're not here because you want to make 50 million pounds a year. I mean, that would be very lovely, don't get me wrong, but that's not why they are coming to talk to me. So we, talking about the finances, I think is really, really important, but also, like you were saying, Lee, to your point, finding, talking about the why and how the fit is really important, because otherwise, if you're only talking about the money and you kind of get close to the end goal, if you've not dealt with everything else, then you run the risk of things not being quite right by that point.
Yeah, it's very much a fit between parties, isn't it? And it's like the trust thing is coming through massively, isn't it, at the moment in the UK in the industry, and how important that is. And like Lee, you said, your YouTube videos got you your first 50 franchisees. Like, it's the fans, it's the power of the network of the customers and things. So I've lost my train of thought. So let's move on to the next question. And we're doing okay.
Franchisees were previous clients, similar point, like not quite 50, but like we have previous clients who are now
who've experienced the service.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's the way to start, isn't it? Organically, not through a clever marketing campaign. It's just get someone on board and get them going. So, so Lauren, we're quarter two now. So another 5 minutes, and then time for questions.
Yeah. Maybe maybe you can start already asking questions if you have any. Feel free to use the chat, ask a few questions, and then we'll start from there as soon as we have a few questions. But you can continue with your questions, Phil.
Cool. So, how do you if there is the investment needed, Steve? Like they're going to need some cash from the bank. How would you ask them what their attitude to taking a loan is, or what their understanding around credit and paying it back and return on investment? Again, this isn't the question for the investor because they know about that, but an individual owner or operator, how would you go about saying, are you willing to borrow 100k?
Well, I think if they're not willing to borrow 100k, then their business acumen's just through the ground. Why would you use your own money when you can risk a bank's money? Know.
Jenna, let's ask you. Jenna, like how much is your franchise?
Ours is just under 10,000, so it's ever so slightly different to Stephen's. But
and are many of your prospects needing to get finance for that, or are they finding that them in a way themselves?
I'd say probably 50-50. It's a question that we ask again kind of towards the end of the discovery, not huge amounts of detail, because again, everyone's British and we're kind of introducing everyone slowly to this idea, but we kind of ask the question, do you have the finances? Or we then sort of briefly introduce the idea of the bank's franchise departments, this government small business loan, or even some grants in some areas for starting a small business. So we start quite early on introducing in the idea, because a lot of what we talk about is education. So we're introducing ideas early on that we then build on later on down in the process.
I mean, what we would usually do is say, if you've got that amount of money, keep it aside as a contingency.
Yeah.
And use the banks while they've got new business loans and everything else that's available to back a business to get going. And you keep your money in a pot, because you never know when you're going to need that. You could have some quieter months, and you can reinvest that to make your business turn a corner into profitability later date. I don't ever find it wise to cut yourself short and put all your money in at the beginning to avoid having a business loan, because business loans are good for that reason.
And like you said earlier, it's about paying for your rent and your mortgage and your bills and your kids' activity groups, etc., isn't it? So, Jenna, your franchise isn't just 10 grand; it's 10 grand plus the business setup costs, if whatever they may be. Yeah. Plus, it's the how are you going to pay yourself for the first 3-6 months?
Yeah, that's our spreadsheet. We have a little spreadsheet that covers pretty much everything. Yeah. And then like at the bottom, I can't take credit for it. Faye, my business partner, is the spreadsheet queen. But again,
she's online, so she'll be happy.
She'll be thrilled. But again, it's very educational, because people haven't thought about, it's not just the franchise fee, it's also the other things. They're having the working capital, there's the MSF, there's the CRM system, whatever it might be. So we have a quite a clear spreadsheet that's not exhaustive, obviously, but we need to make sure that they are aware that it's not just the franchise fee that we're talking about. But again, conscious of, being risk averse, we're conscious that we're staying in our lane as well. So we always suggest that they consult an accountant, because we wouldn't be giving proper advice.
Lee, in the US, what's like, is it just the thing that everyone takes the finance, or how does it work with you?
Surprisingly for our brand, and we might be unique in this space because we do have lower startup costs. Now, obviously the assets of the like trucks and equipment that are going out and doing the work is really the biggest investment. So we see the overwhelming majority of our owners actually just pay the initial fee in cash, and then they might finance trucks and equipment. So that's one of the nice trade-offs about our industry. And then we also partnered with some of the larger brands in our industry. And I think that's important too for franchisors out there, is like try to build partnerships with like the biggest asset purchases that your franchisees will need to make. So for us, we partnered with Ford and General Motors, two of the biggest auto manufacturers in the US and the world. And our owners can get discounts on those trucks. They can get better rebates, better upfront pricing, whatever it may be. So then they can offset some of that initial cost of like, okay, I don't have to go out and buy a $50,000 truck out of pocket. I can go put $5,000 down and have a really good term to pay it off. So we've done that for our owners. So the big lump sum really is typically like our initial fee. For us, that's $35,000. That does need to be paid up front. We do not finance that. They can pay that cash, or they can get a business loan for it. And then everything else, the trucks, the equipment, that can be financed. And then really they just need extra capital for probably advertising and then operational expenses, getting the business off the ground. So there's a lot of flexibility with that. I think knowing like how to play the game and then advise them through the process is the most important. It's like, hey, if you are risk tolerant, we can do, really aggressive loans and float all this, like Steven said, with the bank's money. Or if you're a little bit more risk averse, it's like, okay, maybe we do it a little bit slower. We don't grow as rapidly, and we focus on what financing options are available through like franchise partnerships.
What happens if they're in the process and then you find out their credit history is wrecked because they went bankrupt or whatever? Like, are you asking a question early about that to qualify them, or are you just taking it face value that they're going to be okay?
Yeah. Typically we don't, and we do take it at face value. We're very old school in that regard. Like, yes, we have 200 locations, but you'd be surprised we've run a background check on 0 owners in Augusta, and we have a very high success rate because we're old school in that way. It's like, hey, if we trust you, if we think you're going to be a good rep of the brand, if you've talked to other owners around you, our owners are really good at sniffing out bad prospects, which is really helpful for us. Like, the stronger you can make your network of owners, the better it will be for long-term brand health. Don't just take the initial fee if someone seems like a good fit, but there were obvious red flags. Like, those are the hardest no's to say, but sometimes you have to say those no's. And so we've avoided credit checks, background checks. Like, if they have the fee, like, obviously we have a form they need to fill out to just verify basic financials, but you could lie on that form. So if you're going to start the relationship by lying to us, like, that's a completely different conversation.
Jenna and Steve, are you checking out your prospects on Facebook and Instagram and seeing what they do in their private time, or?
We get a lot of interest from social media as well. So we've kind of, people have already followed us. But again, it's slightly different. We're not, we haven't got investors coming to us and saying, right, we're going to invest. And it's a very different market. And we're probably more, we do talk about that, but later on down the line, because ours is very educational. I think if we were saying to people, right, we need this, we need this, we need this from the very early days, people would run a mile. And we're more probably akin to Lee in that sense. One of our big roles is protecting our franchise culture. Yeah.
And at lower levels of expenditure,
slightly different.
People can get hold of 5 or 10 grand if they really wanted to, in a way that's maybe not a non-business loan. So it's like but when you're talking 150, then obviously you're going to need some more support. Steve, are you asking your prospects about the investor about their backgrounds and if they've been insolvent and bankrupt in the past and going through checks? Or you're on mute, Steve.
Sorry.
2020, Steve.
So we ask all these questions when we have a face-to-face with our franchisee. So we'll bring them into head office, we'll sit them down, and we'll have a criteria which we go through. We ask them all these things. We don't really go as deep to go through their Facebooks and Instagram, simply because I don't think it's a true reflection on the character. For instance,
are you saying Instagram's not a true reflection of life?
I'm not on it anymore. So, but you've got a girl posing with a margarita in a bikini, and you think, oh, she's a porn star, but actually no, she's just a girl in a bikini having a margarita, and she's got a great business acumen and can just do a cracking job. You know, we'd never really go down the social media route, but absolutely, you know.
I'm not sure whether in the UK we're allowed to do a background check on someone. We could do a credit check with their permission, but I think the background check, you might need to know someone deep down in the dark web to sort that out for you.
And that's why, to be honest, like a lot of the people that we work with, you know, the potential franchisees are parents. Often their social media is locked down anyway, which is, unless you're putting yourself out there, won't ever want the public to see their children or that kind of thing. So, you know, we don't go with snooping.
Was that your carpet fitter, Stephen? That's why you were on mute, wasn't it?
He's on mute again.
We're almost there. You can tell him to carry on in a few minutes.
At the risk of American ignorance here, don't you have to verify what football club they root for, right? Isn't that like a religion over there?
We just make sure that they don't follow one.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
And if it's Arsenal, they're out.
Okay.
Okay, so no, we don't have any questions so far from the chat, but maybe I have a question. So maybe at the early stage of your franchise journey, has the way you talked about money, has it ever been a deal breaker? Did you do any mistake when you talked about that topic? Anything that you should advise people to avoid?
Who's that to? Is that to me?
Yeah, I don't know. You can start.
I'm happy for someone else because half of it cut out then for me.
Okay.
The carpet fitters are making too much noise. I don't know that we have. I think we've just talk about it differently, and probably perhaps at a more early stage. Just for example, maybe finding out roughly what they might need to make, you know, what sort of salary longer term they're looking to replace, just so we can more early on make sure that it's potentially realistic. We probably talk about it in a different way, but I think the information is still the same. We just present it probably in a less, I don't know, less scary way now. We have we have like charts and things like that, more because of the people that we're talking to, and we've recognized that, you know, we were the first UK franchise of our type. So we've learned a lot along the way of the type of franchisees that we're looking for. And so we've amended how we talk about it, what we talk about at various stages from the very beginning. We've learned a huge amount, but I don't think it's massively different. I think it's just we've probably made it a lot easier to understand.
And it was all about the early advice you got from that franchising company, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were just top notch.
Okay.
There's a very important question in saying my signal keeps lagging, dropping. Will this be recorded?
There seems to be a question in a Q&A, but
there is one question from Mario.
But I don't find a Q&A.
Questions, thank you. Oh, I don't see a Q&A.
Just next to the chat tab.
Next.
Top right.
Sorry. That's me. Oh, yeah.
Lauren, do you want to read it?
Yeah. Any suggestions or tips to have the sales conversations as a brand new franchise program with no average numbers due to the newness of the business?
I'll answer that one.
No average numbers. How do you deal with that?
I'll answer it first. As a consultant who helps businesses in exactly that position, you've got a business. So you've got records. So you use your records, and you use those in a very transparent way, in a clear, simple way. And if you've got a couple of sites yourself, even better. If you've only got one site, one location, or one territory, you just lay it out for them. Here's my income for the last 12 months. And here's my profit margin for the last 12 months. And then within an illustration that you lay out for them to say, here's some scenarios, they can see, oh, okay, I see how that £1 million is made, for example. And I see 20% profit margin, great, £200,000 net profit. So just use you and your business.
You can also potentially look at, your average increase, your average growth year on year as well from whenever you started. If you've got 2 or 3 years under your belt, you can be like, well, this is, this was our percentage increase year on year. And then when you do have franchisees on board, you can then, highlight that. But that's probably, I imagine, what we all did, is that, when we had our pilot, we used ourselves, and then we had, our founders, and we used them, and it grows from there.
But also breaking down your income. So Stephen, you might say 25 grand a year. That's 25 grand a year. That'd be a crap business. 25 grand a month selling burritos. Oh, it sounds like a lot of burritos, but actually it's £10 per burrito. It's 100 burritos sold a day, 7 days a week, etc. And you've got to your, when you break it down like that, you go, oh, actually, that's quite an easy business to make that money. So
yeah, and what I would say is, say you've got to look at the you've got. Sorry, I've lost you.
We're still here. We can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you need to look at, so say you're trading in an area in whatever business you're doing. You got to look at the potential of if you went to another area as well. Say, you're taking it somewhere from, a town, and then you were on about opening something in London. You could also look at, the possibilities of a much higher footfall, or these are projections. So you could always look at it like that as well. Okay. Population density, Lauren would know mostly about that. but you can have a pilot business that does 10 grand in a certain area, and that same business could do 50 grand in another area. So you could use that to project.
Okay, thanks a lot. I think it's time. It's time. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for joining us. If you have further questions, I think if you'd like to continue the conversation, so feel free to contact us, Jenna, Steve, Lee, Phil, or myself. Maybe through LinkedIn is maybe the easiest. And to answer Jill's question, we will be sending out the replay shortly. So feel free to share it. Thanks a lot, and see you soon. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.